Once riding in old Baltimore, heart filled, head filled with glee, I saw a Baltimorean keep looking straight at me. Now I was 8 and very small, and he was no whit bigger, and so I smiled, but he poked out his tongue and called me nigger. I saw the whole of Baltimore from May until December, and all the things that happened there, that's all that I remember.
I think it was in fifth grade when I was walking from Sunnyview playing Little League Baseball, where I was walking home, predominantly white neighborhood, 2.5 miles from my house, walking past a house, and a little boy came out and called me the N-word. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I would say he was probably third grade. I was in fifth grade or second grade. He was, and I said, you need to go talk to your mother about that. So how did I feel about the youngster being younger than me, calling me an N-word? Hurtful, most definitely hurtful. Kind of embarrassed for him and his family that he would know such a word at being at such a young age. And my only question to him and to myself was, did he really understand what the word is and the origin of the name? It was just kind of embarrassing that someone in my community would say such a thing. In elementary school, the white kids were surrounded by black kids from Quinn Road. In middle school, majority of the white kids weren't introduced to my culture. They weren't introduced to black kids. So they had questions on where does your hair grow like that? Why do you wear these clothes? Why do you dress like that? Why do you speak like this? One of the things I always realized is in English was a hard subject for me because at home you spoke broken English. So all those questions, what people will ask you, which I never asked the white kids this, why do you wear bell bottoms? But it just, you start to think that things are different. How are people raising their kids? How do people are introducing their kids to culture? Are they giving them an education on diversity? And I say no, because who's giving them the education on diversity? It was me. I was. My father's older brother was in Detroit area working for Ford, actually staying on a corner where a flatbed truck would come by and pick him up and take him to Ford. Sent word down. My father came up with 2 kids from Clarksdale, Mississippi, 18 years old, with no job, coming to Detroit, looking for a future. He got here, standing on the corner for 4 years, every day, working. After 4 years, that had been right around 1940. Things were going on in the world. Ford production was very high, and then shortly after that, of course, the war started, and he was working full-time, 7 days a week, about 13 hours a day. And unfortunately, or fortunately, having kid after kid after kid until he came to me, youngest of 15 kids. My father always talked about the man. And, it's like, who's the man? If you're not careful, the man will get you. And the man was actually the white man. I remember in 1970, he was buying a brand new car, a Ford. He worked for Ford. He was going to buy a Ford. He was going to buy a Galaxy 500. And he left to go buy it, and he was gone for quite some time. And so I would have been 12 or 13 at the time. And I'm going like, Dad, what took you so long? Lovely car, what took you so long? There's a Ford dealership a mile and a half away from our house. And that's when he started explaining to me more or less the black male code about him driving down to Mississippi, and his car would be 3/4 full of gas, but he had to stop to get gas because he knew at certain stations he couldn't buy gas. They would not service him. And I said, Dad, why wouldn't they service you? He goes, well, because of my skin color. They will not service black people at certain areas. And that's when he told me he had to go to East Detroit, which was, 8 miles away, to buy his car. because that way he thought he was getting a fair deal and that the people would sell to him. So here's a man that's working for Ford his whole life, cannot go to a local Ford dealership to buy his car. There was something wrong with that picture. My mother being trying to bring more money in the house, ended up working for a white family in Mount Clemens, and we thought they were like the richest people in the world. They own a clothing store in downtown Mount Clemens, which we got some of our clothing from. The family helped us out with clothing that they couldn't sell, so that's the clothing we wore. Just recalling my childhood and thinking about when I first got on the baseball team, my mother bought me tennis shoes. Might not be a big deal for you, huge deal for me. Because at 10 years old, I never had a pair of tennis shoes. You had dress shoes. When you went to school, you wore dress shoes. When you went out to play, you wore dress shoes. You had one pair of shoes. And you had to put cardboard in your shoes when you got holes in them because you wouldn't get a new pair of shoes. And I always told my kids today, you knew you were poor when you had to change the cardboard in your shoes. When I left elementary school and come to our middle school, I sort of made life changes. Very picky who I pick as my friends. My greatest friends today, my best friends today, are the friends I met in 6th grade. So that's where it started. Me playing sports, being at the school majority of the time, football, basketball, baseball. So in football, I think there was only 3 other black guys on the team. Basketball, there was 4 of us. And baseball, I was the only one. So who did I hang around majority of the time? Were my white friends. So I started probably acting more like them. I guess so, because hanging around them, I guess that's what happens. One of our classmates my senior year mentioned to me that I don't act black. And I said, you need to explain that to me, young man, because I am a black person. You need to tell me what a black person acts like, because what you did, you just insulted me, and I don't take kindly to it. And you just insulted my race, saying that my race is bad because everyone else doesn't act like me or act worse than me. Didn't hit him, came close to it, but I was probably the most upset that I've ever gotten at a person, especially in high school, for someone to say that to me in front of my face. I think he's trying to pay me a compliment. Once again, ignorance, he just didn't know better. Junior year in high school, we're playing St. Clair. That's, just south of Port Huron. And they had a small gym, and the gym was packed. And I remember taking the ball out of bounds, and I was going to inbound the ball. And, the ref was about to hand it to me, and there was students from St. Clair calling me the N-word. Not just one, like a whole cheering section calling me the N-word. So me being me, I turned around and asked them, were they talking to me? And I asked the ref, I go, do you hear this? And the ref didn't say anything about it, and I just got the ball and started playing. The incident happened away from our bench. It happened away from both benches. So like I said, we're just near the student section there, and my friend Mike Didio, he was there, and he kind of just rolled his eyes. I never talked to Mike about it. But it just, it's like life lessons. Either you let it get to you or you move on. I moved on, had a good game, and felt that I accomplished something by beating them. But once again, I'm thinking, man, life is hard sometimes. Floyd was the last street in Clendale's district. And down the street from me, I had some friends. They went to Lance Cruise, and the other people went to Lakeshore. But they're all from my neighborhood. And so as I was playing sports, we would go to these Lance Cruise or Lakeshore and play football, and I would know the black guys on our team. And they had, just like we did, we had 1 or 2, and they had 1 or 2. And we played basketball, they had 1 or 2, and we had 1 or 2. And we played baseball, they would have 1, I would have, these people are my neighborhood. And I would go over and talk to them, and so I knew the black people in those other schools. We were in Dayton my senior year, and my friends on the baseball team, we were playing in Dayton, and they had, I think, 4 black kids on their team. And all my friends came over and said, Rodney, do you know them? Guys, we're in Dayton, Ohio. How in the world do I know these people? And they said, well, everyone else we played that they had black people that you knew them. So once again, it was just, my friends being naive, something once again, I'm teaching them diversity again, that there's other black people in this world that I don't know. Sophomore year, Colleen was in my U.S. history class. Starting to talk to her a lot. Junior year, talked to her even more. That summer of our junior year, I asked her out. Start really dating right before high school, our senior year. My football coaches started looking at me differently when they saw me with her. Now, we weren't hugging and holding hands type or anything like this, but did you see me with Colleen in the halls? Yes, walking her to class. Did you see me with her at their football games? Yes, most definitely. Notice a change, a huge change. I was one of the better athletes in school. I was one of the better players in school. And definitely saw an attitude change with all my coaches, football coaches, that is. Questioning me, why would I let someone else wear my football jacket? Which all the guys on the team who had girlfriends, their girlfriends wore their football jackets. But I was the only one that was questioned for it. The athletic director at the time questioning my girlfriend, how in the world she got a pass to get into games free, where he gave a pass to one of his friends and his friend gave it to her. Just little things all over the place. Why are you trying to wreck your career? And I was a starting quarterback since 10th grade. My senior year, they took me out of playing quarterback and switched me to a running back, which I was fine with. I knew my future wasn't in football at all, and I got to play defense a little bit more. So I thought that was good for me. But sometimes looking back, you kind of wonder, were they doing this for the good of the football team or, to somehow punish me? But the coaches always used to talk to me, always, beforehand, call me in their office, want to know what I thought. All that stopped on the football team. Every single one of that stopped. My basketball coach wasn't bad, because anytime I had a bad game or something, he asked me, is my girlfriend getting in the way? And I think he was just truly, concerned about my welfare and just asked me, was my girlfriend getting in the way? Didn't have a girlfriend last year, you had one this year, and you had a bad game. My baseball coach, there was some friction there. All of a sudden, I wasn't his favorite player, which I played with him ever since I was in 10th grade. I always thought I was the best player on the team. Did I get treated differently my senior year? Most definitely. Did he talk to me my senior year? No. But there was a lot of things that went on my senior year in baseball that I thought were kind of fishy because of who I was dating. Halloween of 1974, dating a young lady who was white, and she wanted to go to her friend's Halloween party. And I said, well, not comfortable going to more or less a white person's house, even though I knew her very well. So I decided to go. I said, let's stay about an hour and we can get out of there. We show up at the house. I remember going in the basement, and there was a lot of people there. I remember seeing a lot of friends there also. And then I saw a person sitting behind one of the poles in the basement that looked black. And I'm going like, who in the world has black? Because I knew like everybody in school, especially everyone in the senior class. And I'm going like, who in the world would this young lady invite from her class that's black to her Halloween party? Other than myself, because I was going with her friend. So I was going around talking to people and getting closer and closer to this black person who looked like a guy. Then I'm really wondering who in the world is she inviting black guy in her school, because there were so few. And the closer and closer I got to this person kept trying to obviously hide from me. And when I got close to this person, find out that it was a little young lady. And she had, I don't know, a couple of hundred rubber bands in her hair tied up so that she can look like buckwheat. So she, put all this black makeup on and had her hair trying to look like buckwheat. And obviously she was very embarrassed by it. I thought it was quite funny. And to this day, I send her a note every year, October 31st, and let her know about 1974. My wife, Karen Denise, of almost 33 years, met her my freshman year at Eastern Michigan, that she was a freshman also. Started dating her the middle of my sophomore year at Eastern Michigan. Karen was, in her early years, she was the type of person that she didn't see color at all. She thought everyone was created equal. I'm going, nice, naive young lady. Everyone has the same opportunities. So Karen invited me to her house without telling her parents that I was coming to her house. So when I showed up to her house, got some funny looks, especially from her mother. Her father was very cordial, asked me how to, where I live, what I was doing, where I come from, how did I get there? Well, you need to drive this way. I think you'll get here sooner. And I'm going like, really? This man's telling me a quicker way to get to his house to date his daughter. We went out, and then, when we came back, dropped Karen off, and I guess there were some words said to Karen about her dating a black person. So Karen's oldest sister, Janice, this is when Karen and I were dating. She wrote me a letter, which I still have. And more or less in a letter, she wrote that she thought Karen and I were a cute couple, a great couple. We still had to learn a lot about each other. And if we choose to get married, which, I don't see anything wrong with you getting married, but you definitely shouldn't have kids. How would you raise mixed kids in this society? And, I read the letter over and over again. I'm going like, really? I was over at Karen's house Saturday in January. And she came with me with a very serious look and said, are you going to marry me or what? Because if you're not going to marry me, I'm wasting my time. And I just said, okay. And she went and got a pad and a pencil, and we started making plans for our wedding. Went to my parents' house, let them know that we were getting married. And my father didn't say a word. He just sat there, which at the time, me being with Karen 4.5 years, especially my father loved Karen to death. Karen did a lot for my father, which was surprising because my father didn't love anybody. That's the feeling he gave you, even though he did. My mother was just my mother. I'm being the baby of the family, and she didn't think anyone was good enough for me, which I understand now, but I didn't understand then. Went to Karen's parents' house to let them know. We got there around noon. About 3 o'clock, 3:30, I'm going, Karen, are you going to tell these people or what? And obviously she was very nervous about telling them. I'm thinking, we've been together 4.5 years. What's the deal here? And, I was over their house for Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas and spent the night over their house while they were there, went golfing with her father for all these years. And, what's the big deal? Just tell your parents. So she finally told her parents. Her mother had like a blank look on her. Her sister Janice poured everyone a glass of champagne. Karen's mother guzzled the champagne. Nothing, a whole lot was said then. And when we left, we heard words from the sisters that, the parents weren't happy. What they were saying, which, it's all hearsay. I never heard from her parents to the day they died, whether they objected about going to our wedding or about us getting married or not. So we heard that, they didn't want any part of the wedding or anything like this. But in the end, things went well. Karen's mother made her wedding dress, but relationship with Arno went very well. So in 1982, I got promoted to a store in Ohio. So we got transferred to outside of Cleveland. I'm working, and she's looking for a place to live. She was going around looking for houses for us to rent while I was at work. I remember her calling me and say, I found a house close to your job, perfect house. But I don't want to make a decision on my own. The landlord said, why don't you just go ahead and sign here? And she goes like, absolutely not. I want my husband to see it first, and this was like 9 o'clock in the morning. Can I bring him by at noon? And she goes, most definitely. So she calls me at the store and says, can you get out at noon, to see these houses? So most definitely come pick me up because we only had one car. So she comes pick me up, and we go to the house, and we knock on the door. The lady answered, and she looked and saw who I was, and she goes, oh, I just rented the house. And Karen goes, no, I talked to you 3 hours ago, and you're holding the house, and you're waiting for me to bring my husband, and my husband worked for this company, and here we are. She goes, no, I just rented the house. I go, Karen, let's go. She goes, no, you talk to me. I go, Karen, let's go. That's when she realized what people were like. We can fast forward to us buying the house that you're sitting in right now. We knew a young lady that was a realtor, and we were looking for a place to live, a house to buy. So she's telling us where not to look. And I'm going, really? And she goes, well, these are the areas in metropolitan Detroit that you don't want anything to do with because of you being a mixed couple. And she goes, I'm just telling you like it is. She didn't want us put us in harm's way. More or less, go in a certain neighborhood, being a mixed couple, she knew that there was going to be issues. And, once again, you think about it, okay, in the 60s, oh, okay, 70, okay, 80, okay. Well, we're in 1991 now. Same thing's happening. Is the same thing happening today? Most definitely. And the neighborhood we decided to live in was very cultural mix, very great diversity, in which we were looking for. Same thing with the elementary school, same thing with the middle school. Things changed a little bit in high school. My kids grew up swimmers. They were competitive swimmers. So if you look in society, competitive swimmers are white. My daughter, at the time, you see all white kids, she looked darker than dark. And my son, who was fairly light-skinned, but around white people, he looked darker than dark. They stood out in the swimming pool. And did they have issues? I'm sure they did. Did they talk about them? I can't remember one time that they talked about, other kids mistreating them. Once I got really into competitive swimming, when it was time for my daughter to go to high school, the question was, what high school you send her into? And I said, well, the high school in our neighborhood. Oh, terrible high school. Why do you want to send her there? Well, my questions to them, have you been there? Well, no, it's just what I heard. I go, well, I don't go in things what I hear. I go find out. We sent her to school, in the high school in the neighborhood. But anyway, my daughter's first day of high school. Went around the high school to drop Emily off, and I noticed black kids. A lot of black kids. And I'm looking for white kids. I'm looking for Puerto Rican kids. I'm looking for Chaldeans. I'm looking for Jewish kids. I see nothing but black kids. White families were sending their kids to private schools, all the private schools, but they waited to high school to send them to private school, which I didn't understand. Met with a counselor at the high school that my daughter was going to, and I'm going like, why is all the kids in the neighborhood going to all these private schools? She goes, well, you mean the white kids? Yes, well, because when in high school you start dating people, and they didn't want the people that they were dating to be anything other than what their culture was. It was just, you think you know it all, and you see this, and you go like, wow. Almost 35 years in retail business. You get to know your community that you're working in. So in certain areas where I've worked, I know that community will not favor an African-American manager. They come in your store and they see a picture of an African-American. Will that make a decision whether they shop there or not? Yes, unfortunately. And then we have our surveys where we ask people, at the bottom of their receipt, how our store doing. And some of the comments that we get back, I just got one 2 weeks ago, where the comment was, it's getting a little dark in the front of your store. What's that mean? And the way I took it, and, I looked at it and I put it down and I came back to it, is, our last hiring is we had a lot of African-American females that we hired. I think it was 6 of them. Or, about 6 months ago where a survey came back and it said, I don't like your self-scans, and then I had to go to your registers and there was a black girl running your registers, so I won't be coming back to your store. So all my fears about putting my picture up, people are telling me I'm right. And that's why I don't have my picture up. Did I ever think that we'd have a black president in my lifetime? Nope, not at all. I thought we had a female white president before we had a black president. But once again, people think that because there's a black president in place, that things are better. So now the nation is not biased on anything whatsoever. So a nation that elects a black president, every single person in this nation celebrates diversity, which is far from it. I really noticed this on Facebook, because it's a lot easier when you're in your own private home No one's around to say something stupid. Not just to say it's stupid, but to write something stupid. And people started writing stupid things on their Facebook page, which I'm going like, if you are really like this, you can't be a friend of mine. Not only you be a friend of mine, but I don't want someone else seeing that you're a friend of mine and you're writing something stupid like this. When the re-election came along, it got even worse than the first time around. And it's not about, once again, just my view, it's not about the presidency, it's about the black president. And like I said, when you bring color in, we have a long way to go. I always like to go back, since I have a grandson now, talking to my daughter about her son and about my daughter's great-great-grandmother that had my grandmother in 1894. And I said, so what do you think was happening in Mississippi in 1894? Did she have a stroller? Did she have a car seat? Did she have, all these? And I said, what do you think the mindset was then? So every time I think about Muna, who is my full Cherokee Indian great-grandmother, I started thinking of my father being born in 1915, struggles he had in Mississippi. Some I knew about, I'm sure some I never dream about. I think about my older brother that graduated in high school from Mount Clemens in 1951. What did he go through? That I graduated in 1975 and what I went through. And I'm hoping it's easier. And I would think it's easier because, where I live today, what I drive today, the opportunities that my kids have had, is it getting better? It gets better every day. Do we have a long way to go? We got a long way to go. Will it happen in my lifetime? No. Will it happen in my kids' lifetime? No. Will it ever happen? I have my doubts, but once again, I had a doubt that will we have an African-American president in the United States? I have my doubts. There's always going to be people judging people, which is prejudice, prejudging. I think it's always going to happen. I think about the Middle East, and sometimes I look at the Middle Eastern people and I'm going like, what are you doing? But they're doing it, the history of time tells you that it just repeats itself over and over. Do I think, my future is bright for my kids? Yes. Do I think the future is bright for Johnny? Most definitely. Do I think Johnny's going to do better than any of us? If I have something to do with it, yes, he will. Will he have challenges? Yeah, he will. Will he be careful where he has to live? Yes, he will. Will he have to be careful what he says? Yes, he will. Will he be judged on his skin color? Unfortunately, yes. And that's the worst thing about it all. People judge you and they don't even know you because of the color of your skin. And that's hard to deal with. Day after day after day. I don't think Karen, my wife, I don't think she ever thinks about her skin color ever. And I don't think a day goes by that I don't think about my skin color at all, which is sad. Very much so.
What was it, after all, that made these people do the things they did? Was it a lack of understanding? Was their attitude picked up from their prejudiced parents? Or was it simply a matter of going along with the attitude of the group? What is prejudice? And why does it exist? What do you think?